Do you think influence and fortune can erase accountability? The answer is a resounding no. The world of Hollywood shines brightly on the surface, yet beneath that glow are cautionary stories of dramatic reversals. Once celebrated as actors, musicians, and reality television icons, they lived amid privilege and applause, surrounded by symbols of success. Today, those images have faded into the muted reality of confinement and consequence. In this video, we explore documented cases of 21 well-known figures whose choices ultimately led them to face the full weight of justice.
But behind the doors, behind the fame, the truth was waiting.
From massive financial deception to grave violations of personal boundaries and irreversible acts that ended careers forever, these stories reveal how a single misguided choice can unravel an entire legacy. What once looked like unshakable power collapsed with startling speed, leaving only lessons etched in consequence. Their journeys stand as a stark reminder that status offers no exemption from responsibility. In this video, we take a closer look at these cautionary narratives, the hidden forces that led to their decline, and how accountability followed in the end. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, and like, so you won't miss more eye-opening stories from behind the spotlight. From vast financial manipulation to severe breaches of trust and irreversible choices that reshaped entire lives, these stories illustrate how a single moment of misjudgment can dismantle even the most powerful legacy. What once stood as an empire of influence and admiration slowly unraveled under the weight of consequence. Their decline offers a chilling lesson. Recognition and status never cancel responsibility. In this video, we delve into these sobering narratives, uncover the underlying causes behind their loss of standing, and examine how accountability continues to shape their present reality. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, and like so you won't miss more compelling stories hidden behind the spotlight.
Private jets and empty vows, broken lines and
The fourth name on the list is Harvey Weinstein, once regarded as one of the most influential power brokers in Hollywood. As a co-founder of Miramax, he played a central role in bringing celebrated films like Pulp Fiction and Good Will Hunting to the screen, and he later received an Academy Award for Shakespeare in Love. For years, his position symbolized authority and success within the industry. That image, however, unraveled rapidly when long-whispered allegations about inappropriate behavior surfaced publicly in 2017, triggering a dramatic reassessment of his legacy and marking a turning point that reshaped conversations across the entertainment world.
final fight, applause fades, excuses fall, truth doesn't bow at all.
Major investigative reports by the New York Times and the New Yorker sent shockwaves through the public as a large number of women, including well-known figures, stepped forward with accounts describing patterns of intimidation, coercion, and serious violations of trust linked to Weinstein. These revelations marked a decisive moment, shifting long-standing whispers into documented scrutiny. In 2018, prosecutors in New York formally brought charges related to severe misconduct, supported by testimony from individuals such as actress Annabella Sciorra, who described a deeply distressing personal experience. The legal process ultimately concluded with Weinstein receiving a 23-year prison sentence, a defining outcome that underscored how institutional power can collapse when accountability finally arrives.
Justice waits, it never dies. Every shadow, every scar.
He later confronted further legal consequences on the West Coast, resulting in an additional 16-year sentence. At present, Harvey Weinstein remains incarcerated at the Mohawk Correctional Facility in New York, with the strong possibility that he will spend the remainder of his life in confinement. His collapse is not merely the chronicle of a single figure's fall, but a turning point that ignited the Me Too movement, a worldwide cultural awakening that challenged long-standing power imbalances and called for greater accountability across the entertainment industry and far beyond.
Every shadow, every scar shows us who we really are.
Suge Knight, once regarded as a towering force in the evolution of hip-hop, was instrumental in shaping Death Row Records and defining the sound and influence of West Coast music. His presence left a deep imprint on an entire era of the industry. Yet alongside these achievements, The 1,990 seconds also saw his public image increasingly shaped by persistent legal entanglements and courtroom battles, which gradually eclipsed his creative legacy. Over time, his unstable personal trajectory and widely debated decisions drew almost as much attention as the music itself, turning his life story into a complex reflection on power, influence, and consequence.
Escapes the final fight, applause fades, excuses fall, truth doesn't.
The final chapter of his legal collapse unfolded in 2015 during the production of the biographical film Straight Outta Compton. A heated confrontation escalated beyond control, ending with a tragic outcome that claimed one life and left another individual seriously harmed. What followed was a complex legal process that initially carried the most severe accusations. After negotiations, the case shifted course, and Knight entered a plea to a reduced charge of voluntary manslaughter rather than the original allegation. In 2018, the court delivered a sentence of 28 years in prison, with the earliest possibility of parole projected for 2034, marking a sobering conclusion to a career once defined by influence and power. His case became a defining crossroads in the life of someone who once stood at the center of the music world, revealing a sharp divide between creative impact and personal turmoil. It illustrates how unchecked impulses and destructive choices can slowly dismantle even the most powerful reputation. Although his contributions helped shape an era of hip-hop and influenced countless artists, the weight of his later actions has overshadowed much of that legacy, leaving behind a sobering lesson about responsibility, self-control, and the fragile nature of fame.
Time reveals what lies denied. Justice waits, it never dies.
The first name on the list is Danny Masterson, widely recognized for his offbeat role as Stephen Hyde in the iconic sitcom That 70 Seconds Show. He later appeared in projects such as Men at Work and reunited with familiar faces in The Ranch. For a long time, his image was closely tied to humor and nostalgia. That perception shifted dramatically in 2017, when serious claims concerning inappropriate conduct entered the public sphere. Multiple women stepped forward with accounts describing troubling behavior that allegedly dated back to the early 2000s, marking a decisive and irreversible turning point in his professional and public life.
Shows us who we really are.
Those who testified described a breach of trust that allegedly occurred within a private setting, framing it as a profound violation rather than a single isolated incident. Throughout the lengthy legal process, Masterson consistently asserted that he was not responsible for the accusations. The proceedings themselves were marked by tension and uncertainty, with the initial trial ending without resolution after the jury failed to reach a unanimous decision. The case was revisited the following year, and during the retrial, the court ultimately found him guilty on 2 of the charges presented, bringing a decisive shift to a long and closely watched legal battle.
No throne escapes the final fight. Applause fades, excuses fall.
The court ultimately imposed a sentence spanning 30 years to life, with eligibility for parole only after a minimum of 25 years has been served. He is now held at a men's correctional facility in California. One of the most debated elements surrounding the case involves a shared religious institution connected to both the accused and those who testify. According to the accounts presented, the organization was alleged to have intervened behind the scenes, discouraging formal reports and attempting to protect his public standing. This dimension added a broader layer to the story, raising complex questions about influence, loyalty, and accountability beyond the courtroom itself.
Applause when freedom breaks its final, hidden in the dark, leaves it stained.
One individual stated that after speaking up, she was met with strong discouragement and cautioned that reaching out to authorities could lead to social isolation within the community. The organization firmly rejected these claims, maintaining that it had no rules or practices designed to block members from seeking legal help. Even so, its involvement has continued to spark intense debate, drawing attention to the intricate layers of influence, loyalty, and trust that can complicate situations where authority and personal boundaries intersect.
Hidden in the dark, leaves it stained, he leaves its mark.
The second name on the list is Ryan Grantham, a former child actor remembered for portraying Rodney James in the 2010 film Diary of a Wimpy Kid. He also appeared in the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus and later made a brief appearance in the television series Riverdale. With more than 30 screen credits to his name, his future in acting once appeared full of promise. That trajectory came to an abrupt and devastating halt at the age of 21, when a deeply tragic event involving his own family stunned the public and transformed his story from one of potential to one of irreversible loss.
Time reveals what lies denied. Justice waits and never dies.
On that tragic day, Grantham carried out an irreversible act within his own home in British Columbia, one that abruptly ended a life and shattered a family. In the aftermath, evidence showed that his state of mind spiraled further as he prepared for actions that could have caused even wider harm. Fortunately, those intentions were never carried out. Instead of continuing down that destructive path, he ultimately chose to stop and surrender himself to authorities. This sequence of events stands as a deeply sobering reminder of how quickly inner turmoil, left unchecked, can escalate toward consequences that alter countless lives forever.
Shows us who we really are.
During the court proceedings, Grantham's defense disclosed that multiple psychiatric evaluations had been conducted, with specialists concluding that he was experiencing profound depression and severe psychological distress at the time of the incident. He later entered a guilty plea to second-degree murder and conveyed sincere remorse for the harm caused. Grantham is now serving his sentence, with the possibility of parole beginning in 2036 after completing the required minimum term. The case remains a sobering reflection on how hidden mental struggles can dramatically alter a life path, reminding audiences that early success offers no guarantee against unexpected and tragic outcomes.
By fate, power borrowed on every seat is
Grantham's story stands as a painful illustration of how unrecognized and untreated inner struggles can spiral into devastating outcomes, reshaping an entire life in ways no one could have imagined. Warning signs of emotional collapse, when overlooked or misunderstood, can quietly build toward consequences that cannot be undone. This case underscores the importance of early care, compassion, and intervention, suggesting that with timely support and deeper understanding, a future once filled with promise might have followed a far different and less tragic course. Amy Locane was viewed as a rising talent in the early 1990s, first drawing attention with her film debut opposite Johnny Depp in John Waters' Crybaby. She later earned praise for her work in Blue Sky and became a familiar face to television audiences through the popular series Melrose Place. At a moment when momentum seemed firmly on her side, she made the personal decision to retreat from public view, choosing to prioritize a quieter life centered on family and personal commitments rather than continued time in the spotlight.
no one's above the
A devastating turn unfolded on a night in June 2010, when Amy Locane was involved in a serious traffic incident that resulted in a loss of life. Authorities determined that she had been driving at an excessive speed when her vehicle collided with another car. The impact claimed the life of Helen Seaman, a respected visiting professor at NYU, leaving a family and community in deep grief. When law enforcement arrived, tests indicated that Locane's alcohol level was far above the legal threshold. She was subsequently charged with serious criminal offenses related to the incident. Despite the gravity of what occurred, her initial prison sentence was set at 3 years, notably shorter than the standard minimum often associated with such cases.
nice designer chains, smiles hiding storms and silence.
In explaining the original decision, the judge emphasized considerations related to her children and their future well-being. During her time in custody, Locane took part in rehabilitation programs focused on addressing alcohol dependency and was reported to have made meaningful progress in that area. However, a higher court later reviewed the case and concluded that the initial punishment did not adequately reflect the seriousness of the outcome, leading to an increased sentence of 8 years. She is now serving that term at a correctional facility in New Jersey. The case stands as a sobering lesson about how impaired judgment behind the wheel can trigger consequences that ripple far beyond a single moment, permanently altering multiple lives and futures. Next on the list is Jo Sun, once seen as a charismatic and unconventional figure whose journey blended moments of opportunity with deeply troubling detours. Born in South Korea, he later relocated to the United States, where he set his sights on a career in mixed martial arts. While his time in top-tier competition was brief and limited, he found modest recognition in acting, often appearing in antagonist roles within smaller action productions. His story reflects a path where ambition and exposure briefly intersected, before being overshadowed by decisions that would ultimately redefine how he is remembered. Jo Sun reached a wider audience through his appearance in the 1997 action comedy Austin Powers, International Man of Mystery, a role that briefly brought him mainstream recognition. Yet behind that visibility, his life was already drifting toward a darker path. In 2008, he was taken into custody for an act of property damage, an incident that initially appeared minor. Unexpectedly, that arrest reopened a long-forgotten chapter when forensic evidence connected him to an unresolved case from nearly 20 years earlier. Investigators then uncovered links to a serious crime dating back to the winter of 1990, involving the unlawful restraint of a young woman, a revelation that dramatically altered the narrative of his past and future. The survivor later described an extended period of fear and extreme psychological suffering, marked by threats that left a lasting emotional scar. In court, she recalled unsettling remarks attributed to Sun during the ordeal, words that underscored the intensity of the trauma. Because legal time limits had expired on several allegations, the case resulted in a conviction on a single major count, carrying a sentence ranging from 7 years to life. Yet the story did not end there. Shortly after his release, Sun became involved in another fatal incident while in custody, which led to an additional manslaughter conviction and a further 27-year sentence. His trajectory stands as a stark example of how unresolved patterns of behavior can continue to generate devastating consequences long after initial accountability. Jo Sun is now expected to spend the remainder of his life in confinement, bringing a definitive close to a path that once showed moments of public recognition. His story represents a dramatic shift from brief visibility to lasting notoriety, effectively ending any future in entertainment or professional sport. A series of deeply flawed choices erase the possibility of recovery or redemption, replacing potential with permanent consequence. While his earlier years may still be debated or remembered by some, the outcome stands as a sobering lesson in how repeated destructive decisions can seal a legacy beyond repair. Michael Jace was an actor widely recognized for his portrayal of Officer Julian Lowe in the acclaimed FX series The Shield, with additional appearances in well-known films such as Forrest Gump and Boogie Nights. Despite these professional milestones, his public image became permanently altered by a deeply tragic incident that unfolded within his Los Angeles home. Driven by intense emotional turmoil, jealousy, and an overwhelming fear of abandonment involving his wife April, a gifted athlete, Jace committed an irreversible act in the presence of their 2 young children, who were only 5 and 8 years old at the time. The event marked a devastating rupture between a once respected career and a personal collapse that would come to define his legacy. According to court testimony, the incident unfolded with chilling detachment, marked by words that reflected a complete emotional collapse rather than reason or control. Prosecutors later stated that impaired judgment and unresolved anger played a significant role in what transpired. The consequences were devastating, leaving permanent emotional scars on his family and irreversibly damaging his public standing. Ultimately, Michael Jace was found guilty of second-degree murder and received a sentence of 40 years to life in prison. Prior to sentencing, he addressed the court with visible remorse, admitting that his actions were driven by a moment of profound irrationality, a realization that came far too late. Despite his expressions of regret, the loss and long-lasting emotional wounds created by his actions remain impossible to erase. Michael Jace is now serving his sentence at a state correctional facility in California. His story stands as a powerful warning about how unchecked emotions, distorted thinking, and unresolved inner conflict can lead to outcomes that can never be undone. It illustrates how a single moment of lost restraint can permanently alter many lives at once, affecting not only those harmed, but also the person responsible, whose future becomes defined by that irreversible choice. Jen Shah, a reality television personality who gained attention through Bravo's The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, quickly became known for her commanding presence and unmistakable style. For a time, she embodied confidence and visibility in the public eye. That narrative shifted sharply in March 2021, when authorities brought charges alleging involvement in a large-scale financial scheme. According to prosecutors, Shah and a close associate were accused of orchestrating deceptive telemarketing operations, with vulnerable older individuals identified as the primary targets, marking a dramatic and consequential turn in her public and professional life. From palace walls to concrete floors, the operation was described as a carefully constructed deception, designed to draw substantial sums from individuals by offering services that delivered little to no real value. Court filings and reports highlighted deeply moving accounts from those affected, including elderly individuals who suffered significant financial losses that disrupted their sense of security and stability. Prosecutors later noted in sentencing documents that internal communications painted a troubling picture, alleging a dismissive attitude toward the harm caused and calculated discussions about maximizing financial gain. These revelations added an emotional dimension to the case, underscoring the human cost behind what might otherwise appear as numbers on a page. After initially maintaining her innocence, Shah later revised her plea and accepted responsibility for wire fraud, a decision that brought the legal process to a close. The court imposed a 6-year prison sentence, followed by an additional period of supervised release. She is currently serving her term at a correctional facility in Texas, with eligibility for conditional review set for August 2028. The case sent shockwaves through her audience and beyond, standing as a clear lesson about how deception driven by greed can carry serious and lasting consequences. It reinforces a broader truth. Public visibility and celebrity status do not place anyone beyond the reach of accountability when trust is abused. Julie and Todd Chrisley, the reality television couple who rose to prominence with the debut of Chrisley Knows Best in 2014, quickly drew viewers in with displays of luxury, confidence, and an unmistakable family dynamic. The series painted a picture of wealth, discipline, and control, becoming a recognizable part of popular culture. Over time, however, that polished image began to fracture. Behind the scenes, mounting legal challenges emerged, and by August 2019, federal authorities brought forward charges related to financial misconduct, casting a long shadow over the carefully curated lifestyle that had defined their public persona. When the truth comes marching by. Authorities alleged that the couple failed to properly report millions in tax obligations and withheld substantial earnings connected to their television success. According to prosecutors, they presented an inflated image of financial strength to lending institutions, relied on misleading paperwork, and secured enormous loans to sustain an image of excess and stability. Over time, these patterns were brought under scrutiny, and the legal process concluded with convictions tied to coordinated financial deception, misuse of the banking system, and violations of federal tax rules. Following a trial that spanned nearly 3 weeks, the court delivered firm judgments that brought their public story to a decisive close. Todd Crisley received a 12-year prison sentence, while Julie was sentenced to 7 years. He is now serving his term at a federal correctional facility in Pensacola, Florida, and she is incarcerated at a separate federal institution in Marianna. Their outcome drew attention to the sharp divide between the polished lifestyle presented on television and the concealed realities behind it, offering a sobering reminder that carefully crafted appearances can unravel when accountability takes center stage. However, in September 2020, Jerry Harris's upward trajectory came to an abrupt halt when grave allegations involving vulnerable individuals were brought to light. The situation quickly escalated into a serious legal matter, resulting in significant consequences, including incarceration. Beyond the courtroom, the revelations shattered his public image, triggering intense reactions across media and audiences alike. What had once been a story of rising fame transformed into a cautionary episode, marked by disbelief, disillusionment, and the swift collapse of a carefully built career.
It's not a story of hate. It's a lesson written by fate.
Following the legal process, Harris ultimately entered a guilty plea to multiple federal charges tied to severe violations involving minors and received a 12-year prison sentence. He is now serving that term at a federal correctional facility. The case stands as a sobering lesson on the critical responsibility to safeguard children and adolescents, and on the profound harm caused when trust and influence are misused. It also underscores the necessity for vigilant oversight, clear boundaries, and firm preventive measures to reduce the risk of similar offenses and protect vulnerable individuals in the future.
This is not a story of hate. It's a lesson written.
What Harris is now confronting stands as a striking reminder of why safeguarding children and adolescents must always remain a top priority. The case brings sharper awareness to the damage that occurs when authority and trust are misused, leaving lasting consequences that extend far beyond a single moment. If this perspective resonates with you, leave a 1. If not, leave a 0 and share your thoughts. Enjoy the video, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to continue supporting our content.